Hello. How are you all doing tonight? There's an old saying, the grass is always greener on the other side. And I think that's especially true for tonight's show, which is all about grass. Yes, you heard me correct. We are talking about grass tonight. Now, why on earth would we waste a whole show talking about grass? What does grass have to offer us in any kind of meaningful sort of way in conversation? Well, I've been thinking about grass a lot. I don't know if this is a hot take per se. I definitely, this is not something I came up with. I can't take credit for it, or I can't, claim to be the person who, coined this idea, this belief, this notion, but it's definitely something that I have felt weary about for a long time, and that is grass. So a little bit of this conversation. Hello, Mr. Bloodshed. It's me, Mr. Frumellini. What's going on? Hey, Mr. Frumellini. I was telling Mr. Bloodshed one day that the Italians and the Jews on the family tree were like cousins. The branches of Jews and Italians, like the family structures are similar. There's a lot of similarities there. So I kind of always felt an affinity. So somewhere down in deep down in my heart, I feel like honorary, and I get these nicknames from time to time: Mr. Frumellini, Mr. Frumaselli, Mr. Frumboni. It goes on and on. In any case, we're talking about grass. Why? What is my beef with grass? Well, I'll tell you. Growing up, I hated mowing the lawn. My dad used to make me mow the lawn, and I hated it. And it starts there, really. Our conversation about grass starts there. Um, I always had to mow the lawn growing up because that was just what I had to do. And I'd say, why? And there was never a good answer. On some level, I can appreciate doing chores and yard work and this, that, and the other. It builds character. It's good to give your kids chores and make them do things. I guess maybe I don't give my children chores actually at all. I don't. I'm like, go and be kids, play, enjoy yourself, whatever. But different generations. The baby boomers grew up with chores, and then the baby boomers, they had kids, and those kids in turn were instilled with this idea that you did chores, and one of those chores is mowing the grass, mowing the lawn. If you had a lawn, some people didn't have lawns. And, sometimes you could do it for a little money, and sometimes you did it just because it was part of, being the household. And again, I don't really have an issue with that per se, but I'll tell you one thing I do have an issue with. I always had an issue with this growing up. And I used to get into these big fights with my dad about mowing the lawn. And because it was always like, it wasn't just about mowing the lawn. It was mowing the lawn on his time. I want you to mow the lawn right now. And I didn't want to mow the lawn right then and there. But besides that, let's put that aside for a second, because that's just, father-son power struggle bullshit. Instead, let me ask a bigger question. Why? Why do we mow the lawn? What's the purpose? Think about all the time that you have wasted in your life mowing the fucking lawn. For what? For who? Who are you mowing the lawn for? Are you mowing it for your parents? Possibly. Are you mowing it for your neighbors? Possibly. Are you mowing it because of a homeowners association? Possibly. Are you mowing it because of for reasons of optics? Most likely. I don't want anybody to think, or it doesn't make the neighborhood look good, or I don't want anybody to think poor of me or my family that we don't got our shit together because we don't mow our lawn. I think all of these reasons are accurate on some level, right? On some intrinsic level.
This is one of the
All these reasons are valid and accurate, but it still doesn't answer the question of why. What's the purpose? Why would I mow a lawn? Like, what's the purpose? Like, how bad is it? How bad is it if the grass grows too high? Is it gonna like kill someone? Like, sure, You could say, oh, well, you don't want to get ticks. Ticks is a great reason why you might want to mow your lawn. But I mean, look, like, think about, that's like one reason versus like 1,000 as to why it's not good to mow your lawn, right? Um, you could say, "Oh, I don't want wild." There's certain wildlife. There's certain. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm getting ahead of myself. So I would always ask my dad. I'd be like, "Why? Why do I have to mow the lawn? Why, Dad? Why do I have to mow the lawn?" There was never an answer. There's never a good answer. And I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this as an aside. If you want your children to do stuff, listen, unsolicited advice, parental advice from a stranger on the internet. If you want your children to do stuff, you should always give them a reason why. If they ask you why, give them a reason. Give someone a sense of purpose in what they are doing. Because if they don't have a sense of purpose into what they're doing, that will breed resentment, and it will cause a backlash. You will not get your objective met because whoever you're telling to mow the lawn is not going to do it because they don't understand why they are doing it. Now, is grass good? Is grass a good thing, a bad thing, or a neutral thing? I think a lot of people would say grass is a good thing. Aesthetically, grass is great, right? Like, on an aesthetic level, I can appreciate certain aspects of grass. Again, going back to the ticks thing, nobody likes a tick, unfortunately. Ticks are just not an appreciated species. They cause a lot of harm. They cause a lot of harm to us. They carry diseases like Lyme disease, and that is just no good. That is a lifelong illness that you don't want to get in any way, shape, or form. Besides that, there's nothing like me. I like to walk around barefoot. I don't like the whatchamacallit, the oppression. That's right. I'm using that word here. The oppression of shoes and footwear. Like, any chance I have to be barefoot or to wear flip-flops, I don't care how dirty and hobbit looking my feet are, I'm going to take it. You know why? I just like the freedom of my feet touching stuff. And one of the most pleasurable things to walk on is grass. In fact, it's the best thing to walk on. So on that level, I do like grass. I have to say, I do appreciate, or I should say, I appreciate grass. But I think that's kind of, and lastly, okay, I'll give you one last thing. It's very nice if you have a big tree. It's nice to lie down in the shade, sitting in grass. I would prefer sand at the beach in the shade because it's softer, and yes, it's a little bit more messy. Yes, it gets everywhere, but if you sit a certain way, you could enjoy yourself just as much on a nice cool bed of sand as you could on a nice cool bed of grass. But that is a nice feature of grass. Three things, right? No ticks, walking with no shoes on, and I guess lying down. Those are three things that are great. Now, here's the other thing about grass. In grass, we're going to use two words here. First word is monoculture, right? And what does that mean? It means that it's singular. Mono is singular, right? So this is a culture, the culture of grass. And we're going to go into the reading. I have some reading materials. I'll let the reading do the heavy lifting here because I'm not going to do, I'm just not going to do it good service. But the monoculture of grass, a singular culture of grass that stretches for thousands and thousands of square miles across the United States, in other places, not just the States. I mean, it's really all over the world. When you think about something that is so singular, we have like different cultures and different beliefs and different landscapes and different terrains. But what is something that unites them all? Lawns of grass. Look at Arizona, the deserts of Arizona, where so much water is spent keeping grass green for golf courses, and people, certain people have their lawns. Like, what do you need grass in the desert like that for? It's just insane versus say you could go up to Maine and find the same thing on the other end of the country. So it's this singular thing that has this monoculture that has sort of taken over the globe. And it's so insidious because it's something that is everywhere and nobody, it's like, it doesn't, I mean, it does harm, but it doesn't do harm in a way that you think something does harm. And so therefore people kind of like overlook. They're like, oh yeah, whatever, it's just grass. Grass is grass, right? What could be more harmless than grass, unless you have an allergy to grass, which does exist, by the way. Could you imagine such an affliction? It's real. People have that problem. So that's the monoculture of grass. That's a real scary thing. Now, comparatively, if you want to compare it to, say, music, look at how music, we've talked about this a bunch. I should get that on a t-shirt. We've talked about this before because that's such a common theme on this channel. We've talked about how the radio homogenized, the radio and MTV, especially going from the 80s into the 90s, especially the 90s, and then the internet exploded everything. Subculture became homogenized across everywhere. What does homogenized mean? It's another kind of fancy sort of parallel word to monoculture, in the sense that it's something that spreads and it's everywhere. So music, top 40 music, or music from certain subcultures, music from, Nirvana and Green Day, like alternative music that got blasted everywhere and became household names. Punk rock, the Sex Pistols, became an international phenomenon. And suddenly the name the Pistols was in everybody in every household was aware of the sensationalism of Sid Vicious. You know what I mean? I think that might have really started with, like, I guess maybe Elvis or the Beatles, right? Like that was the first big sort of homogenization of things. It was really with like the dawn of rock and roll. And now it's spread to, I don't know when it started a long time ago, but right under our noses, while we're sitting here talking about music, lawns have taken over. And in a way, and I know this sounds crazy, I know I sound stupid saying this, but it's true. It's fucking fascism, bro. Fucking Kentucky bluegrass is fucking fascist, man. It's like there's no diversity. That's the bottom line. There's no diversity in anything. It's just all fucking grass. We cut down swaths and acres of woods and flowers and all these things that we consider. And then you have the whole idea of like, what is a good plant versus what is a bad plant, and again, there are, like, you can say, oh, poison ivy is a menace because it gives everybody a rash and it's no good. Fine, fair enough. But look at like a dandelion, right? A dandelion, like what is a dandelion? Why is a dandelion like bad if not for the fact that it's just simply categorized as a weed, right? Oh, weeds, they're bad. You don't want them. You want only grass. So it's like, so grass becomes this like this group think, right? It's this like this idea that we all need to be grass, and that nothing that's different, that stands out, can exist, because if it's not grass, it's not good. And that to me is fascism. It's fucking fascism. Imagine if people were like that. And we've had groups of people, I'm sure there's plenty we could list here. I'm not going to get into the weeds about it, but there's plenty of groups of people who tried that, who wanted to weed out the Jews, black people, just people of color. What we just want a singular thing. And is that good for anybody? Is that good for anybody at all? It's not good for anyone. It's bad. It's really, really bad. Um, Before I launch into the reading here, I have some so my readings on this, that was my rant. That was the basis of my rant. That's my opening thesis statement about grass being evil. So insidious. Sorry, I'm drinking seltzer and I'm burping. The insidious fascist nature of grass. That's like the opening thesis statement. And now we're going to dive into several articles that talk about it better than I can. But before we do, let's take a look at our sponsor, Riot Stickers. If you need stickers, look no further. Go to riotstickers.com where you can get 200 die cut stickers for $69. That is a great deal. And let me tell you something. Die cut stickers, they're in the shape of anything. You can get a sticker in the shape of anything you want. So if you want a sticker of weeds or grass, you can get that done at riotstickers.com. Just go to the link down in the description, riotstickers.com/Frumess. That's Frumess, and take advantage of this deal today. It's probably won't be around for very much longer. I don't actually know, but something you don't want to miss out on. Riotstickers.com. When we're back, we're talking more about grass. Join me.
Posters and promo cards, there's nothing we can't print for you. From stage backdrops to bass drum heads, we can print on shirts, we can print on hats, we can print on pants. Cheap prices and high quality, quick turnaround times and free shipping. We also offer free artwork support, great customer service, and so much more. We are the bomb. Riotstickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. Riotstickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. Riotstickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb.
All right, we are back and we are talking about grass. That's right. We're talking about grass. It's real. We're actually doing that. That is actually happening right now. We are talking about grass. So let us do that. This is from a website called Science Direct. Okay. And Science Direct, this is a research paper by Megan Wheeler, Christopher Neal, Peter Groffman, Megan Avolio, Neil. The list goes on and on and on. I can't list everybody, but you can see their names are right here. And it's from a periodical called Landscape and Urban Planning. And this is from September 2017. And this is pages 54 to 63 from volume 165. Now, I am not going to sit here and read this because it is boring as shit. No offense, guys. It's more boring than any of the other stuff we tackle. And I just cannot, I can't sit here and read it. So instead, I'm going to recommend, maybe I'll put a link down in the description, and I recommend that everybody check it out. But here are some highlights. We're just going to look at the highlights of what they say, because they speak in very scientific terms, like far beyond even anything that I read right on here. And instead, what we will do is we will just look at one graph in particular that I find very interesting. So here are the highlights from this periodical here. Lawns in climatically distinct regions of the U.S. had similar floras. So even though you had different climates, like climate distinct regions, they all had similar floras because of monocrops. Lawns shared few species with reference vegetation. Spontaneous vegetation was widely shared amongst lawns in different regions. Lawn forb diversity, forb is like just other sort of plants. Lawn plant diversity increased with higher annual precipitation. So the more rain in the region, the more diversity you had on the lawn. And then species diversity decreased with household income and lawn fertilization. What does that mean? It means the more you fertilized your lawn and the more money you had to fertilize said lawn, the less species you had. Now look at this species richness. Look at this graph here. This is so bad. I can't believe we're looking at this. This is too funny. Here, let me see if I can get a better picture. Share this tab instead. Can you see that? So this is household. So the more the household income. So if you had over 150K versus 35K, the less species richness. You could see the graph goes down here. Isn't that just fascinating, everybody? That's precisely why we're not going to continue to look at this particular piece that I had procured, because it's just not that interesting. Instead, let's talk about the history of lawns. So we're going to kind of hop, jump, and skip around from article to article, because I couldn't find anything that specifically worked for what I want in order to convey this notion. So what is the history of the lawn in the first place? How did we get here? How did we get to this place where everybody in the world has the same kind of lawn? The history of the lawn. Oh, sorry. Let's take a look at who wrote this article. This is from Scientific American by Ferris Jabber from July 29th, 2013. It's an excerpt from Outgrowing Traditional Grass Lawn. But we're just going to read the part about the history of things. Holy crap. Motherfuck. I just lost it. Damn. Okay. The history of the lawn begins at least 900 years ago in Great Britain and northern France, both of which have maritime climates with relatively mild winters and warm, humid summers that are ideal for many different grasses. In its inception, the word lawn may have referred to communal grazing pastures, clearings in the woods where sheep and other livestock continually munched wild grass into submission. Even today, some place names retain their memory of these early lawns. Balmer Lawn in England, for example, encompasses 500 acres of grass pasture. Soon enough, people found other uses for grasses: aesthetics, sport, and leisure. King Henry II, from 1113 to 1189, had gardens at Clarendon Palace that boasted a wealth of lawns, and Henry III, 1216 to 1272, ordered laborers to slice up tracts of naturally occurring turf and transplant them to his palace. The world's oldest bowling green in Southampton, England, has been maintained since at least 1299. So you have this sort of aesthetic that's really, I guess, initially tied to wealth and prestige. Right? It's an optics thing. It always goes back to an optics thing, even today. Why do you have to mow the lawn? Well, what would the neighbors think? Right? Isn't that like the ultimate basis? But again, think about all the time, money, and energy you waste on mowing your lawn. Like, who honestly gives a fuck? Really, truly. Think about all the time that you waste in your life making sure that the grass is short enough. I mean, that time can be spent doing, unless maybe you genuinely enjoy mowing grass, and some people might, some people do it for a living. That's a different story. We all do things for a living that we might not want to do. In ancient times, lawns were not always expanses of unbroken green. However, some medieval paintings of gardens depict carpets of turf grass stippled with various flowers such as lily of the valley, poppies, cowslips, primroses, wild strawberries, violets, daisies, and daffodils. People walked, danced, and relaxed on these flowery meads, which were meant to imitate natural meadows. So initially, it's like we just want a meadow right when we step outside of our house, right? Boy, I love seltzer. In the 15th and 16th centuries, Europeans used white clover, chamomile, thyme, yarrow, self-heal, and other low-growing meadow and ground cover plants, sometimes mixed with grasses, to create lawns and pathways on which to walk and mingle. But at least those are aesthetically pleasing, and they still support like animals, like grass, like Kentucky bluegrass or whatever. It's just boring. It's just fucking green grass for miles. Who fucking needs it? Who needs that? In the early 1900s, a weed known as coctula, and again, this idea of this term weed, we decided societally what a weed is. And then once we decide what a weed is, we decide that it can't exist. It loses its right to exist. Who are we to decide what can and cannot exist? I mean, that's bullshit, man. That's fascism. When Cthulhu began invading bowling lawns in New Zealand, when the groundsman of Caledonian Bowling Club tried to get rid of the weed by scarifying the lawn, he only quickened its spread. Rugby players noticed, however, that they ran faster and played better on the tightly knit, smooth carpet formed by the weed than on grass. So that's interesting. So they found a practical use for it. By 1930, Caledonian Bowling Club replaced all its grass with Cthulhu. Other clubs did the same. For most of history, however, mixed plant lawns and non-grass lawns have been the exception, in part because a smooth, well-kept, lush grass lawn became as much a symbol as a functional part of one's property. In the early 19th century, vast grass lawns surrounded manors were not only aesthetically pleasing, providing unobstructed views of an estate, but they were also further proof of wealth. So again, it's just like it all goes back to status, right? To keep their lawns neat and trim, British aristocrats and landed gentry had to look after grazing animals, most commonly a flock of sheep, or hire laborers to slice through overgrown grass with scythes. Eventually, the idea of a grass lawn migrated to America, where it has evolved in its own way. Think about the industry that is formed around grass. You need a lawnmower. You need to buy gasoline. You need to buy fertilizer. You need to buy poison. Some people have, the whole gardening industry is sort of, buttressed at least or predicated on grass. And again, for what purpose? We're pouring so much money into all the water that you spend, and we pour so much effort into this thing because I guess it's pleasant and aesthetic. And I don't know. Listen, I do like things that are pleasant and aesthetic, but my idea of what is pleasant and aesthetic is different for me, and it's a struggle at my house where we do have green grass, and I don't fucking want it, man. I don't want it. I want wild grass. I want moss. I want rocks. I want we do have chipmunks. I want animals, man. I want like snakes, and I want real. It's real. It's not fake. It's not plastic, It's like, this is literally what fighting fascism is, man. Truly and utterly. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, that's ultimately what it leads to. Look at suburbia, and there's nothing wrong with suburbia, and I like suburbia. Don't get me wrong. I live in suburbia, but it's just this idea, like, my neighborhood is not a cookie cutter neighborhood. It was before certain zoning permits and laws were in effect. So we have all these different structures, and that makes the block very eccentric and interesting. Imagine like just living in if you live in the middle fuck of America and everything's just flat, right? It's just flat and there's nothing. And it's just the same tract houses on and on and on. It fucking depresses me, man. It depresses me. So eventually the idea of a grass lawn migrated to America, where it has evolved in its own way. At first, early colonists planted gardens of edible and medicinal plants. See, of edible and medicinal plants. That makes sense. And the idea of that we have the problems like food deserts, do you know what a food desert is? It's like basically, how do I explain what a food desert is? Now I got to look it up. Can't use a word and not know what it means. Hold on. Food desert. Let me just think of so whatever I'm going to say is not going to be as good as the. All right. What is an example of a food desert? A good example of a food desert would be a densely populated urban area where the nearest grocery store is 10 miles away and few residents own vehicles, right? So the idea is not that you can't get food, but that the only food that you can get is like, bullshit from the bodega because the nearest, fruits and vegetables are too far away for you to have, right? The idea that we all have pieces of land, right? If you're a homeowner or you rent a home, you have a tract of land and you can grow crops. You can grow medicinal plants. You could do all of that. You can grow enough food to feed your family. And yet there are laws, and don't ask me to quote them because I don't know them off the top of my head, but there are laws that prohibit people from doing this. Yes, there are some gardens, but there's like all that, the idea that more people are not in a self-reliant way growing their own food when they can on their land, which is what we've done as human beings ever since we put stakes in the ground and we stopped being nomads and we started the agricultural revolution. Thousands and thousands of, actually, I guess there was is that the agricultural revolution? The dawn of agriculture, thousands and thousands of years ago, man. That's what allowed people to stay put because they had a food source. And it's like, we've somehow returned to this idea that like, why wouldn't you have the utilitarian use of your own land for edible and medicinal plants, right? So at first they did plant that. Grasses native to America were generally too unruly to make neat lawns anyhow. Some wealthier citizens wanted to imitate the lawns that surrounded abbeys and mansions in Britain. However, suitable, who fucking wrote this? Jesus. In Britain, however, and suitable turf grasses were imported from Europe and Asia. English engineer Edwin Beard Budding changed lawn care forever when he invented the lawnmower in 1830. Although it was a bulky wrought iron contraption that often dug up the soil. I just can't read this shit. I'm just sucking right now. I'm sucking dicks at this. Although it was a bulky wrought iron contraption that often dug up the soil, period. Others improved this first mower, again, because that's what happens with capitalism, right? It just sort of streamlines things, making it lighter and sleeker. People on either side of the Atlantic could now mow modest-sized lawns themselves instead of requiring dozens or hundreds of workers or a flock of sheep. You think about before the lawnmower, a sheep was the fucking lawnmower. Isn't that fucking crazy? Michael Pollan has pinpointed the 1860s as a pivotal moment in the history of American lawn. In that decade, landscape architect Frederick Law Olmsted, I love his middle name is Law, designed the suburban community of Riverside, Illinois. Wow. So that's the birth of the suburb, right at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. Olmsted forbade fences and walls and ran a seamless ribbon of green lawns in front of each row of houses. Around the same time, influential landscape designers such as Andrew Jackson Downing and Frederick J. Scott published popular books advocating the lawn as a necessity for any respectable homeowner. So here is where this sort of dogma, right? This mentality gets entrenched and ingrained into the common landowner. You have, in order to be a respectable landowner, you need to have a well-maintained lawn. And from 1860 all the way to, I would say that millennials and Gen Xers are far more like lax about lawns. I really feel like the lawn Nazi routine really is dying out with the baby boomers. And I want to hope and believe that maybe Gen Zers and Gen Alpha who are coming up now, that they're going to like totally just go off the chain with lawn care, right? But from generation to generation, it was sort of embedded, right? It's embedded. The greatest generation, or the silent generation, nailed it into the baby boomers' heads. We need to have these lawns. We need this, you know? A smooth, closely shaven surface of grass. Think about how the language that's being used here too. A smooth, closely shaven surface of grass. What else do we shave, right? What else do men shave? They shave their faces. So the mentality, holy shit, I think we're peeling back the onion right now. Is there a connection between a man's shaven face and a man's shaven lawn, and this idea of order coming with the shave, right? It's part of the same mentality. Holy crap. Now that is a fucking hot take right there. Let your lawn be your home's velvet robe, and your flowers, it's not too promiscuous decoration, because of course modesty is godliness, and godliness is cleanliness, right? The lawn sprinkler appeared in 1871, and garden hoses became cheaper and more durable. Between 1947 and 1951, Levitt and Sons Inc. built the first mass-produced suburban community. So that's the rise of the modern suburb, right? Between 47 and 51, right after World War II, right? Every one of the 17,000 houses had a lawn. Levittown became a model for suburbs everywhere, and each new generation of homebuyers inherited houses with grass lawns. Despite America's devotion to private property, any one homeowner's lawn became every neighbor's business. And this is what I was talking about, right? This idea that if you better toe the fucking line, we're mowing our lawns, you better mow your lawn too, right? It's like this agreement, this communal agreement. A well-manicured lawn, or conversely, an untended jungle, was a reflection, not just of its owners, but also the entire surrounding community. So it's this sort of tribalism groupthink that gets inflicted on everybody, no matter what you think. And who suffers for it? The ecosystem suffers, because so many things, look at all the species that died out or got pushed out or pushed away, pushed back. Even today, surveys show that in contrast to citizens of the UK, Americans care a great deal about the state of their neighbors' lawns. In a particularly memorable scene from F. Scott Fitzgerald's Great Gatsby, Jay Gatsby, who lives in one of the grandest homes in posh West Egg, gives his neighbor Nick Carraway's modest house a makeover, including a well-needed shave for his ragged lawn. Today, the continental U.S. has more than 40 million acres, 40 million acres of residential and commercial grass lawns. 40 million acres have been taken over by grass. This is insane. This is insanity. This is insanity. This was a number that was properly calculated for the first time in the early 2000s by Christina Melissi of NASA and her colleagues using satellite data and aerial photos. In terms of acreage, turf grass is on par with wheat. Did you hear what I just fucking said? Turf grass is on par with wheat, the country's fourth largest crop. This is fucking crazy. All those lawns provide some clear benefits to people in the environment. They suck up carbon dioxide, but so could other plants, a greenhouse gas that traps heat in the atmosphere, potentially mitigating global warming, as long as establishing, mowing, and fertilizing the lawn does not produce too much carbon dioxide and nitric oxide to negate the benefit. So it might not even be worth it because of all the fertilizer and the nitric oxide. They prevent soil erosion and dissipate heat, counteracting the urban heat effect, in which cities and towns full of metal and concrete retain much more heat than the surrounding rural areas. Grass lawns are ideal for pickup games of soccer, rugby, and touch football. They give young children a safe and soft outdoor space with which to play. As more and more eco-psychology studies demonstrate, green spaces reduce stress, restore attention, elevate mood, and make people feel better about life in general. But why? But question, why does it have to be grass? Why can't it be other things? Why can't it be more diverse? Why do we have to have a monocrop? And that's what I just don't understand. Ultimately, however, the consequences of our obsession with pristine grass lawns may undercut any benefits. In addition to depriving both native pollinators and honeybees of wild habitat and food, thereby threatening our agricultural system. I mean, everything is predicated on the fucking bee. Bees make the world go round. We don't starve because of bees, and we're killing them. Didn't you see what happened in that Black Mirror episode? That was fucked up. That was crazy. Malisi's computer simulations reveal that all the nation's lawns demand about 200 gallons of potable water per person per day. 200 gallons per person per day. Some research suggests that gardens and parks, more or less left alone, capture much more carbon than highly cultivated grass lawns. The Environmental Protection Agency estimates that gas-powered lawnmowers, which emit 11 times more air pollution than a new car for every hour of operation, contribute to as much as 5% of the smog in some areas of the U.S. Every summer, Americans spill 17 million gallons of gasoline when refueling mowers and other gardening equipment. And of the approximately 90 million it makes me want to barf reading these numbers to you. I want to fucking vomit. 90 million American households with a yard or garden. 90 million American households have a yard or a garden. 45 million use chemical fertilizers. 46 million use insecticides, and 47 million use chemical weed killers. Such chemicals, many of which, especially older varieties, have known health risks. DDT did a job on me. Now I am a real sickie. Guess I gotta break the news that I got no mind to lose. Gonna get a PhD because I'm a teenage lobotomy. Have known health risks, contaminate natural habitat, and seep into our homes and drinking water. A conventional lawn is also a complete perversion. Perfect word, perversion of a grass's typical life cycle. Lawn grasses fall into two general categories: cool season species such as fescue and bluegrass, and a warm season species such as Bermuda and Ziosia. During the summer, wild cool season grasses stop photosynthesizing, turn brown, and grow far more slowly, if at all, in order to conserve energy. In the fall, they rebound. Conversely, wild, warm season grasses become dormant in cooler months and flourish in the summer. To keep our grass lawns green year-round, we continuously douse them with water and fertilizer, forcing the plants to grow nonstop. This is insanity. And the fact that, again, because this is seeped into all aspects of our fucking society, this is the harm. Like, look at the harm that's being done on an ecological on a species, on a diverse species level, all of it. It's bad. It's fucking bad, man. To keep our grass lawns green year round, we continuously douse them with water and fertilizer, forcing the plants to grow nonstop. But we don't want them to grow too tall, of course. By mowing down grass before it even has a chance to produce flowers and seeds, we effectively trap these plants in perpetual sexual immaturity. Although many are still able to reproduce asexually, cloning themselves and spreading laterally with creeping roots. Mowing also requires grass to devote a lot of energy and resources to healing itself by sealing off all wounds. The smell of freshly cut grass, often so comforting and nostalgic, is a chemical alarm call, a bouquet of fragrant, volatile organic compounds that plants release when under attack. The cycle of a lawn: saturate, decapitate, repeat. And it's often said that this is plants screaming. They're literally screaming when this happens. At this point, Grass lawns are so firmly rooted in the American culture that most people never question them. Suburbanites grow up playing on their lawns. All their friends have lawns. It would be weird not to have a lawn. Yet most of us did not decide to cover so much of our front and backyards with grass. It was already there. And many people who build a home from scratch incorporate turf grass by default. The grass lawn is not so much a choice as an imposition, a legacy born of vanity and avarice that evolved into conformity in the name of community. This is written so perfectly and succinctly. Since at least the 1960s, when Rachel Carson stressed the dangers of pesticide use on lawns in her book, Silent Spring, brazen individuals and small groups of counterculture horticulturalists in America and Europe have resisted or outright rejected the controversial grass lawn. In the New Yorker, Elizabeth Colbert, I don't think I need to read anything else. I think this article really just nails everything. In the New Yorker, Elizabeth Colbert described some of their proposed alternatives. In Noah's Garden from 1993, Sarah Stein advocates ungardening, essentially allowing the grass to revert to thicket. Sally and Andy Wasowski, in their Requiem for a Lawn, these are real books. I love that. Requiem for a Lawnmower from 2004, recommend filling the yard with native trees and wildflowers. Amen. Blessed be. For those who don't want to give up the look or playing space provided by a lawn, the Wasowskis suggest using buffalo grass, one of the very few turf species native to North America. William Nearing, who for many years was a professor of botany at Connecticut College, planted trees around his property and then left most of the rest of his yard unmowed to become a meadow. For the past few decades, David Brenner, a horticulturist from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, had been touting moss. I love moss. Moss is great. Moss is an alternative to grass. In Food Not Lawns from 2006, Heather C. Flores argues that the average yard could yield several hundred pounds of fruits and vegetables per year, but that's not good for the agricultural industry. They don't want you to do that. Edible Estates from 2008 is a chronicle of a project by Fritz Haig, an architect and artist who rips up conventional front yards in order to replace them with visually striking edible plants. Haig calls his approach full frontal gardening. I mean, so there is like a pushback, and it's good that we have people out there fighting this crass fascism, right? More recently, in the birthplace of the grass lawn, think about it like this for a second. Think about grass. Grass is one thing, right? A monocrop. Imagine if every person was one thing across the globe, that we had no diversity. We had no culture. We had no diversity of culture, of music, of food. Everybody looked exactly the same. Everybody talked the same and thought the same. It would be pretty fucking boring. It would be terrible. You know, part of what makes life interesting is diversity, just different groups of people doing different things in different ways. And then you go to different places and you exchange ideas and you learn about them and they learn about you, and you pick up a little thing of theirs and they pick up a little thing of yours, and you take what you know and take what they have and you fuse it together into something that's brand fucking new. I mean, that's the beauty of like cultural collaboration. We see it all the time with food and music, right? When a population moves to another area, right? Like for instance, like I'm just pulling this out of my ass, like a Vietnamese population down in Texas, and all of a sudden you have Vietnamese food being fused with Texas barbecue, and you get like a new fusion food. Or like a great example of when, all the Jamaican reggae and ska records that came to England, right? In the mid to late 70s, in the early 70s, actually, in the late 60s, like 68, 69 was the dawn of the skinhead movement, the good one, right? The Rude Boys and all that came because, the fusion, like all this fusion is a beautiful fucking thing. To me, the exchange and embrace of ideas is a way to peace between different peoples, because generally if you're different, if you're other, you're going to fight. But what's the alternative? Monograss. Nobody wants to be monograss. Fuck that shit. More recently, in the birthplace of the grass lawn, a determined graduate student has created an entirely new kind of lawn, if we could still call it that. In the 1970s, when Lionel Smith was 11 years old, a drought shriveled the garden in the front of his home in Bedfordshire, England. Those shrubs and grasses browned, resilient weeds and wildflowers bloomed. He thought it was beautiful, but his father asked him to mow all the flowers down. Not wanting to forsake his pocket money, Smith capitulated because when kids growing up, remember what I said at the beginning of the show, that, some you do chores for money or you do chores just because. More than 20 years later, while earning an MA in horticulture at the University of Reading, Smith decided to try and make a viable lawn without a single blade of grass, a dense mesh of flowering, low-growing, broadleaf plants that would abide some mowing and walking. What began as a few experimental gardens with just 4 species, red clover, self-heal, daisies, and yarrow, grew into many tightly woven swards with more than 65 native and non-native species each, and none of them were grass. To choose these species, Smith perused data collected by researchers at Sheffield University about the types of plants that grow in British lawns, looking for soft-stemmed, laterally spreading plants in particular. He settled on violets, English daisies, small-leaf clovers, chamomile, thyme, yarrow, self-heal, lawn lobelias, and cortula, among many others. Not only did these flowering plants provide complete ground coverage, they required 1/3 less mowing than traditional lawns, 3 to 9 times a year, in part because some of the plants adapted to regular mowing by curbing their upward growth. In the sward's early stages, mowing is essential to prevent taller species from dominating once established. However, Smith finds that the swards need less and less mowing each year, and he doesn't water them. England's climate takes care of that. Even plants have proved notoriously difficult to grow in British weather, such as the blue pea have thrived, blah, 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 blah. I think we're getting... All right. I think we've sort of read through here. Amazing, blah, blah, blah. Yakety schmackety. So this is from Home Digest. Why perfect lawns are harmful to the ecosystem. Lawns create an unbalanced ecosystem. Grass lawns are considered a monoculture, an area where only one kind of crop is grown. Monocultures are sometimes referred to as biological deserts because they do not support many species in the ecosystem. For example, a lawn where dandelions are allowed to bloom, often some of the earliest food for bees and other beneficial insects, whereas grass lawns do not offer anything to support a balanced ecosystem. Not only does grass not benefit the ecosystem, but sod imported from Japan in the early 1900s brought the Japanese beetle to the United States. While the adults feed on over 300 types of plants, the grubs feed on the roots of turf grass, in the same kind of grass that makes a lawn look perfect. Japanese beetles lay their eggs in turf grass. Those eggs hatch into grubs, and the grubs grow into adults that ravage vegetable and landscaping plants. For as long as there are large swaths of monoculture grass lawns, the cycle of an unbalanced ecosystem will continue. Concerns about synthetic lawn chemicals. I think that's self-explanatory. We don't need to read that. Water and gas usage. We already went over that. I mean, it's just insane. Benefits of grass. Now, though we have thoroughly demonized the use of turf grass, let's talk a little bit about the potential benefits. Grass has always been a source of food for animals that graze, but not when you're cutting down Amazon rainforest to create, grazing lands for cattle that you're going to slaughter, right? Like that's terrible. Even lawns have some benefits, although not as effective as native plants. Solutions. Perhaps a solution to having the best lawns to give up the idea that a traditional monoculture lawn is perfect. I agree with this. That is the solution. Ultimately, that's what it really comes down to. Bottom line, bottom friggin' line. Our lawns are killing us. What is the alternative? No, we pretty much went over that. So, I mean, that's really, I think that's really where the show ends here. The bottom line is to bottom line all of this for you. Diversity, when it comes to lawns, diversity is important. And you don't even have to spend, if you just let it grow, if you let it be, if you let it go, then it's going to, it's going to naturally take care of itself. You won't even have to deal with it, and I guess there are some things to consider. Like, again, none of these articles talk about ticks, or at least none that I saw, but ticks are a worry. But still, fascism is also a worry, and grass is fascist. So that's where I'm leaving you today. Think about how you can transform your lawns, as I think about how I can transform mine, despite the insane protests that I received for thinking such a way. Well, if you want to lie down in a hammock, right? Who doesn't love a good hammock? I have two. I have two hammocks? That's right. Thinking about getting a third. We'll see. In any case, thank you. That's the show tonight. We'll be back real soon. Peace, hair grease, and we'll see you next time.